So 2020 has struck again, this time affecting our comic book world. So on Monday, it was recently announced that DC Comics has done a massive layoff, and people are considering a bloodbath. And a lot of people lost their jobs, even the higher ups have lost their jobs. And it's very sad. And it's going to affect our world as we know it, as comic book readers and as comic book lovers. Let me just go ahead and read you what the Hollywood Reporter wrote, because they're the ones that broke the story on Monday. So they said Monday's Warner Brothers layoffs. So they said Monday's Warner Media's layoff have affected a significant number of high-level figures at comic book powerhouse DC. Multiple sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. Among those to be losing their positions are Editor-in-Chief Bob Harris, Senior VP of Publishing Strategy and Support Services Hank Canals, VP of Marketing Creative Services Jonah Whalen, VP Global Publishing Initiatives and Digital Strategy Bobby Chase, Senior Story Editor Brian Cunningham, and Executive Editor Mark Doyle, who oversaw the rollout of Black Label graphic novels. However, Jim Lee remains the Chief Creative Officer. So Jim Lee's gonna keep his job while everyone else is going to be falling off. I'm assuming Warner Brothers wants to keep Jim Lee there just so he could oversee some of the decisions that they have and maybe use him as the comic book reference when they do make their comic book movies or TVs. And it's kind of like, hey, is this canon or is this what happens in the comics? And then he's you're just like the comic book guy on set. They always need one guy from the comic book industry to kind of approve things or at least approve the storylines to make it make it make sense for comic book readers. So they're keeping him while everyone is leaving, and they're saying it's about one third of people are getting laid off, and which equates to around 600 people losing their jobs. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now, so losing your job is very vital to people's livelihood, and it's difficult times. People need to get paid to survive this pandemic, because we don't know how long it's going to last, and who knows if these people can even get another job, because a lot of these people that are affected are also in the comic book world. They're writers, they're editors, they're colors, so it's pretty sad. And so let me just go down the list on what actually this means and which categories of DC Comics is it affecting. All right, so number one, DC Universe is going to be gone. All the entertainment is going to be moved to HBO Max, which we already know. I think we've already seen hints of it, with Doom Patrol and with Harley Quinn moving to HBO Max, and as well as Stargirl moving to CW. So of course they're going to try to capitalize on CW and try to grow HBO Max as well. And so yeah, they're keeping that, and they're moving all the movies and TV to those platforms. So I don't know what's going to happen with DC Universe. Maybe they'll keep the comic books side of it just for readers, but I personally feel like they're going to just get rid of it. And I'll tell you why later on. And then they're going to get rid of the DC Collectibles. So the beautiful, massive, huge DC statues that you guys see online, at Comic Cons, at your conventions, is all going to go away. They're not going to produce anymore. I'm here unless other toy brands they license them out like Hasbro, but to expect less DC collectibles and DC statues in the future, and that's pretty sad, because one of my favorite things to do at Comic-Con is kind of roam around the toy section, or at least the DC collectible section, and kind of look at and kind of be in awe at all these beautiful statues. I remember when Justice League came out, they had all these cool, Justice League collectibles and the statues. It looked beautiful. I wanted them, even though I couldn't afford it at the time. They were really expensive, right? So, these collectibles, they're basically meant for distinguishing, these serious toys to the retail store toys that you see at Target and Walmart. So it's sad. A lot of people put these up in their houses, put them in glass cases. But a lot of us, I feel like we just look at them, like me, I'm one of them. And it doesn't help DC just by looking at them, because we're not giving them our money, we're not supporting them. So it makes sense for them to, you know, cut the loose ends and cut off heavyweight. And of course, they're going to get rid of the DC Comics. They're going to get rid of, sadly, the weekly comics, the physical copies. So none of the physical copies that you'll see at your comic book stores will be the individual issues anymore. Unfortunately, the only physical copies that DC Comics will make now is trade paperbacks that you'll be able to get at your comic book store or at your Barnes and Nobles. And that is sad, and it looks like they're going to be more focused on digital weekly comics. So if you want to get your weekly comics of Batman, weekly comics of Man of Steel, Action Comics, that's all going to be on digital. Either that's going to be on the DC Comics app or Comixology or Amazon. It's going to be all on the digital space, and they're going to save the physical comic books for hardcovers and trade paperbacks at Barnes & Nobles or at your local comic book store. Which means, you know, less weekly comic books, less money that your comic book store can make. Meaning, you know, we could see, you know, a lot of comic book stores shut down in the future. And I'm only, you know, if this happens, most likely Marvel Comics will follow suit, and they will also, you know, lose less weekly comic books, and they'll maybe have just Image Comics alive for the weekly comics. I don't see Image Comics going away at this point, because they don't have like the big, you know, movies and TV shows like DC or Marvel has to rely on to make more money. So Image Comics is safe. DC Comics is basically gone for physical copies, but most likely Marvel Comics will follow suit and get rid of their, you know, physical issues and just remain all on digital. Super sad, because I personally love comic book stores, even though I haven't been reading. I haven't been reading honestly recently, but you know, one of my favorite moments of my life is basically going to the comic book store and just chopping it up with the comic book owner and just talking comic books, and just asking them what they recommend and what new issues have come out that they recommend, and all that stuff. That's like my favorite thing. So if comic book stores go away, I'm gonna be so sad. But I mean, it is expected. We are in 2020, and this is a pandemic, but we are moving more into the digital age. So it just makes sense. All right, so of course, a lot of YouTubers are reporting this, and I got this graph from Grace Randolph, where she got it from the Hollywood Reporter, which basically shows numbers about, you know, showing numbers about the graphic novels and the single issues, and comic book stores versus bookstores like, you know, Barnes & Noble. So here's the graph right here. All right, so as you can see at the top, you see graphic novels have made 765 million compared to the single issues that only made 355 million. And of course, the digital comics is low on the totem pole, but that's why they want to continue growing it using the platforms that they have. And as you can see here as well, the bookstores is making about, you know, 50 million more than the comic book stores, which is really sad. That is astounding to me, because I didn't know like bookstores really were. I didn't think they existed anymore in America, but maybe it's just where I live. We don't have that many bookstores. I mean, the closest Barnes & Nobles from me is about 40 miles away. 40 to 50 miles away from me. Barnes & Nobles is not, it's pretty rare to see nowadays. But maybe people have other bookstores that aren't Barnes & Nobles. Of course, digital copies is kind of low on the totem pole as well. But as you can see at the top, graphic novels is killing the game in terms of like what kind of comic books people read. I know Rob. I know when he first started reading comic books, he was reading mostly graphic novels, and then he started buying single issues for the ones that he wants to keep up. But mostly, you know, it just makes sense to buy, you know, a collection of comic books in a trade paperback form. You know, it's less messy to keep all the. It's less messy, you know, to have all the single issues laying around. I mean, I have that issues right now. I don't know what to do with all my single issues. I don't know if to donate them or sell them on eBay. But I mean, graphic novels are the way to go if you want to keep things simple and clean for your apartment or your house or your bedroom. So especially for new readers, I mean, it's kind of weird to go to the comic book store every week. It's easier to buy like your single issues. It's easier just to buy a graphic novel, which what Rob did when he first started, and it makes sense. And so single issues are going to stay on digital, whereas comic book graphic novels are going to remain in the bookstores in the future. All right, so that's the graph right there. It's pretty remarkable to see the numbers, with the graphic novels versus the single issues, but I'm not surprised at this point. But again, I was just surprised that we even had bookstores in general still laying around. I know we have comic book stores, but I didn't think we had like bookstores. All right, so the CEO of Warner Brothers, he did speak out, and this is what he said. He said, "We are going to do the following. We are elevating HBO Max in the organization and expanding its scope globally. 2, we are simplifying how we organize our studios," which makes sense because everything was kind of scattered around, right? It didn't seem like DC knew what they were doing or Warner Brothers knew what they were doing. We all knew things were kind of confusing when they started creating all these different platforms. Number 3, we are creating a consolidated international unit focused on scale and efficiency. 4, we are bringing our key commercial activities into one group to allow us to operate more strategically. And number 5, we are making other structural changes that will help us operate more effectively and efficiently. So everything I just said in this report makes sense, and it kind of falls in line with with this list. So it looks like DC is going to be focused more on on their movies and TV shows and games. So games sticking around, games, TV, and movies, it's all sticking around. So if you don't read any comics at all, and you just listen to stuff on YouTube, maybe you listen to the audio stuff on YouTube about comic books, this, it doesn't really affect you, and you just watch the movies and TVs. It doesn't really affect you at all. But for those that read comic books and actually care about the comic book stores, it really affects them because those are the memories that we have, and it's kind of sad to see. But yeah, I mean, good news is that DC is going to pump out more movies, TV shows for us, which is awesome to see. I mean, I love watching the movies. I mean, because of HBO Max, we have the Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out 2021. So I'm all for it. But seeing the age where comic book stores may become obsolete is very sad. And I love having physical copies of these single issues in my hand. I love smelling it. I love going to the comic book store again, like I said, just having that moment with everyone in the store. So it's sad to hear, but I guess to consolidate everything and kind of like optimize DC's IP, I guess it has to be done. But it sucks to hear that everyone, it comes at a cost of everyone's jobs. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. It's a lot of information. But yeah, let me know you guys' thoughts, your feelings below. And don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and I'll see you guys again. Bye.